Hello there. Welcome back to the 67 Sleepy Facts channel. If this feels like your corner of the internet, consider doing the YouTube rituals. Tonight, we're diving into the minds of those prudent introverts, the ones who think 3 steps ahead while everyone else is still processing step 1. If you've ever noticed things about people they don't even realize about themselves, or felt completely exhausted after long social interactions, even though you were just sitting there, this one's for you. So get comfortable, and let's explore what really goes on inside a mind that never truly stops.
Fact 1. Why they're called prudent introverts. The word prudent means careful, thoughtful, and wise in practical matters, and that's exactly what sets these introverts apart from others. While some introverts simply prefer solitude, prudent introverts operate on a different level. They think before they speak, plan before they act, and analyze before they commit. Every decision, no matter how small, passes through a mental filter. They don't just choose, they calculate. They don't just react, they reflect. This isn't overthinking for the sake of anxiety. It's a deliberate, methodical approach to life. Their minds are built like chess players, always thinking several moves ahead, considering consequences others haven't even thought about yet. When someone invites them somewhere, they're not just thinking, "Do I want to go?" They're considering the time commitment, the energy cost, the social dynamics, how it fits into their week, what they'll need to recover afterward, and whether declining will damage the relationship. All of this happens in the few seconds before they answer. This careful nature is both their greatest strength and their heaviest burden. It means they rarely make impulsive mistakes, but it also means they rarely get to experience the freedom of just doing something without analyzing it first.
Fact 2. Their brain never stops processing. A prudent introvert's mind is like a computer that never shuts down. It just keeps running background processes constantly. Even when they look calm and quiet on the outside, inside their head is a whirlwind of activity. They're processing the conversation from earlier, analyzing someone's tone, planning tomorrow's tasks, questioning a decision they made last week, and simultaneously staying present in the current moment. Picture this. They're sitting in a meeting, nodding along, appearing engaged, but their brain is doing 5 things at once: listening to what's being said, noticing who keeps interrupting whom, wondering if that comment from their boss meant something deeper, mentally drafting the email they need to send later, and remembering they forgot to respond to a text from 3 days ago. This constant mental activity is exhausting. While others can zone out and think of nothing, a prudent introvert's brain refuses to idle. There's always something being analyzed, some pattern being noticed, some detail being filed away for later. They'll be in the shower and suddenly remember a weird look someone gave them in 2018, and now they need to figure out what that meant. This is why they need so much alone time, not to think more, but to finally let their mind process everything it's been collecting all day, without new input constantly flooding in. Alone time is when they can sort through the mental filing cabinet that's been getting messier all day. Fact 3. They notice patterns everyone else misses. Prudent introverts have a gift for pattern recognition that borders on supernatural. They notice when someone's behavior shifts slightly. They pick up on inconsistencies in stories. They can sense when something feels off, even if they can't immediately explain why. This happens because their brain is constantly cataloging information: tone of voice, word choice, body language, timing, context. While most people process conversations at face value, prudent introverts are building complex models of how people think and behave. For example,
They'll notice that their friend always cancels plans when a certain person is involved, or that their coworker gets defensive every time a specific project is mentioned, or that someone's texts have gotten shorter and less enthusiastic over the past 2 weeks. These aren't obvious changes. They're subtle shifts that require someone to actually be paying attention over time. Over time, these models become incredibly accurate. They can predict how someone will react, what they'll say, even what they're thinking. Someone will make a joke and they'll know, just know, that another person in the room is uncomfortable even though everyone else is laughing. They'll sense a relationship is ending weeks before the actual breakup because the patterns have already shifted. It's not mind reading. It's just that they've been paying attention so carefully for so long that human behavior becomes predictable. But this gift comes with a price. Once they see a pattern, they can't unsee it. They'll watch a friendship slowly dying and be powerless to stop it because the pattern is already in motion. They'll notice someone's interest fading and have to decide whether to bring it up and seem paranoid or stay quiet and wait for the inevitable.
Fact 4. Every word is carefully chosen. When a prudent introvert speaks, it's not random. Every word has been selected with purpose. Before they open their mouth, they've already asked themselves, is this the right time to say this? Will it be understood the way I mean it? Could this be misinterpreted? Is this worth saying at all? This internal editing process happens in seconds, but it's thorough. They're not just thinking about what they want to say. They're thinking about how it will land, how it might affect the relationship, what follow-up questions it might create. Imagine they want to decline an invitation. They can't just say no thanks. They need to find the exact phrasing that communicates, I appreciate being invited, I'm not rejecting you as a person, I have a legitimate reason, I'd like to be invited again in the future, but I genuinely can't make this work right now. All of that nuance has to be packed into a response that doesn't sound over-explained or defensive. So they might spend several minutes crafting a text that seems effortlessly casual. This is why they often pause before responding, not because they don't know what to say, but because they're running quality control on their words. In group conversations, by the time they've formulated the perfect response, the topic has changed. So they stay quiet, and people assume they have nothing to contribute. But really, they had something brilliant to say. They just needed 30 more seconds to refine it. And sometimes, after all that processing, they decide the best option is to say nothing at all. Silence for them is often the most carefully chosen response of all, because they've calculated that speaking will create more complications than staying quiet, even if staying quiet means being misunderstood as disinterested or aloof. Fact number 5. They're running simulations in their head constantly. Before a prudent introvert does anything, they've already done it a dozen times in their mind. Going to a party? They've mentally walked through arriving. Will they knock or just walk in? Where will they stand so they don't look awkward? Who will they talk to first? What if that person isn't there? They've prepared 3 conversation starters, anticipated questions they might be asked, and planned responses that make them seem engaged but not too available for lengthy conversations. They've also identified 3 different exit strategies. The early exit, I have to get up early tomorrow. The medium exit, I should probably get going. And the emergency exit, I'm not feeling well. Making a phone call? They've rehearsed the conversation, anticipated questions, prepared responses. They know exactly what they need to accomplish in the call, what information they need to gather, and how to redirect if the conversation goes off track. Even simple things like ordering food or asking a question involve mental simulation first. At a restaurant, they've already narrowed down their options before the waiter arrives, rehearsed how to pronounce the dish name, and prepared follow-up questions in case their first choice isn't available.
Their brain is constantly running what-if scenarios, testing different outcomes, preparing for contingencies. This might sound exhausting, and it is, but it's also how they feel prepared and in control. The simulation helps them navigate a world that often feels unpredictable and overwhelming. The downside? Real life rarely follows the script they've prepared, which means they're constantly having to improvise while their brain frantically updates its models in real time. Someone responds in a way they didn't anticipate, and suddenly they're recalculating everything mid-conversation, trying to adjust their approach while still appearing natural and engaged. Fact 6. Their memory works differently than others. Prudent introverts don't just remember what happened. They remember how it felt, what it meant, and why it mattered. Their memory isn't a simple recording. It's a deeply annotated archive. They remember the exact words someone said 3 years ago because those words carried emotional weight. Someone once told them, "I'll always be there for you," and they can recall not just the words, but the restaurant they were in, what they were both eating, the specific tone of voice, the eye contact that was made. And when that same person later disappeared during a difficult time, the contradiction isn't just noticed, it's archived as a data point about reliability. They remember small details from conversations because their brain tagged them as significant. Someone mentioned they hate surprises, and 2 years later, when planning that person's birthday, the prudent introvert remembers and plans accordingly, while everyone else is confused why they're so insistent on no surprise party. They remember promises, inconsistencies, patterns, and changes that others have completely forgotten. This isn't about having a better memory, it's about the level of attention they pay to things. While others are skimming through life, prudent introverts are reading every word, analyzing every sentence, and highlighting the important parts. The result is a mental library so detailed and organized that they can pull up specific moments from years ago with startling clarity. Someone will casually say something that contradicts what they said before, and the introvert will think, "But you said the exact opposite 6 months ago." Though they probably won't say it out loud, because they've learned that people find it unsettling when they remember things too well. But this also means they can't forget the things they wish they could. Hurtful comments, broken promises, moments of betrayal, these aren't just remembered, they're preserved in perfect detail, complete with all the emotional context. And unlike others who can forget and forgive, they can forgive, but forgetting isn't really an option when the memory is that vivid. Fact 7. They're always reading the room. Walk into any space with a prudent introvert, and within minutes they've mapped the entire social landscape. Who's in charge? Usually the person everyone else unconsciously orients toward. Who's uncomfortable? The one with crossed arms, standing slightly apart from the group. Which conversations are genuine and which are performative? They can tell by the laugh. Real laughter is different from social laughter. Where's the tension between those two people who are deliberately not looking at each other? Who's pretending to be happy? The one whose smile doesn't reach their eyes and whose responses are a half-second delayed. They're not trying to do this, it's automatic. Their brain is a social radar that's always scanning, always collecting data. They notice the micro-expressions that flash across faces, the brief flash of annoyance before the polite smile, the moment of hurt before the defensive joke. They catch the slight changes in tone, how someone's voice gets a little higher when they're lying, or a little flatter when they're hiding disappointment. They see the body language that doesn't match the words. Someone saying, "I'm fine," while their shoulders are tense and their jaw is clenched. While everyone else is participating in the moment, the prudent introvert is simultaneously experiencing it and analyzing it from outside. It's like watching a movie while also being in the movie. They're having the conversation, but also observing how the conversation is happening. This dual awareness gives them incredible insight into social dynamics. But it also means they can never fully relax in group settings. There's always a part of their mind that's working, observing, processing. They can't just be present the way others can, because presence for them includes awareness. Even when they're trying to have fun, there's a background process running that's monitoring everything, and that process never turns off.
Fact 8. Their decisions are based on complex mental models. When a prudent introvert makes a decision, they're not just choosing based on what they want right now. They're consulting a complex mental model that includes past experiences with similar situations, potential future consequences, how this affects other people, what this reveals about their values, opportunity costs, and dozens of other variables. A simple question like, "Want to go out tonight?" triggers an entire decision tree. How much energy do I have right now? What's my energy forecast for the rest of the week? Do I have any obligations tomorrow that require me to be sharp? Will declining this invitation damage this relationship? Have I declined too many times recently? If I go, how long will the event last? What kind of social interaction will it be? Small talk heavy or actually meaningful? How long will I need to recover afterward? Is this person I want to invest in? What's the social cost of saying no versus the personal cost of saying yes? Will saying yes now mean I have to say yes to similar things in the future? What precedent am I setting? By the time they've processed all this, the moment for an easy yes or no has passed, and now their pause itself has become awkward. People think they're indecisive. They're not. They're just making decisions using exponentially more data than everyone else, which takes time. And the frustrating part is that they know they're overthinking it. They can see themselves doing it, and they wish they could just be spontaneous, but their brain won't let them. It's like watching yourself drown in possibilities while everyone else is swimming effortlessly. Even after they make a decision, they're still running simulations. If I had chosen differently, what would have happened? Was this the optimal choice? They're plagued by the ghost of unchosen alternatives, always wondering if a different path would have been better. Fact 9. They experience decision fatigue at a deeper level. Every choice a prudent introvert makes costs mental energy. Not just big decisions, but every single micro decision throughout the day. What to wear. That's not just grabbing clothes, it's considering context. Where am I going? Weather, which they've already checked. Who they'll see. Professional contacts require different presentation than friends. How they want to be perceived. Approachable, serious, creative, and whether these clothes match the energy level they're trying to project. What to eat. They're weighing nutritional value, cost, preparation time, and energy. Whether they'll regret eating heavy food before that meeting. If this choice aligns with their health goals, and what this meal decision means for their remaining meals that day. Which route to take to work. They're calculating traffic patterns based on the time, the probability of construction, which route has better parking, the likelihood of running into someone they know, and whether taking the longer scenic route is worth the mental reset it provides. By the end of a normal day, they've made hundreds of calculations that others make on autopilot. Most people's brains have shortcuts. I always order this, or I always wear this. But a prudent introvert's brain treats everything like it matters, because to them, everything is connected to something larger. Every small choice is a thread in a larger tapestry, and pulling one thread wrong can unravel something important. This is why they crave routine and structure. It reduces the number of decisions they need to make. If breakfast is always oatmeal, that's one less decision tree to navigate while their brain is still booting up for the day. And it's why by evening they're mentally exhausted even if they didn't do anything.
Their mind has been running complex calculations all day, processing inputs, generating outputs, managing systems, and the battery is simply drained. They didn't run a marathon, but their brain did, and now they need to plug in, shut down, and recharge in silence before they can function again tomorrow.
Fact 10. They have deep conversations with themselves. A prudent introvert's internal dialogue isn't just thoughts, it's full conversations, debates, and interrogations. They don't just think, I wonder if I should text them. They have an entire discussion. Should I text them? Well, they haven't texted me in 3 days. Maybe they're busy. Or maybe they're waiting for me to reach out. But if they wanted to talk, wouldn't they have messaged? Unless they think I'm mad at them because I was short in my last reply. Was I short? Let me reread it. Okay, maybe a little. Should I apologize? No, that's weird. Just text something casual. But what if they're actually pulling away and I'm being clingy by reaching out? This internal committee meeting can go on for hours, examining every angle, considering every possibility, playing devil's advocate against their own arguments. They'll be both the prosecutor and the defense attorney, presenting evidence for and against every option. And here's the thing, they know they're doing it. They can observe themselves having these conversations and think, this is ridiculous, but they can't stop. It's like watching a courtroom drama where you're the judge, both lawyers, the defendant, and the entire jury. They rehearse difficult conversations before having them, sometimes spending more time on the internal rehearsal than the actual conversation will take. They'll script both sides, what they'll say, what the other person might say, how they'll respond to that, what could go wrong, backup plans for each scenario. Sometimes the imagined conversation is so vivid and thorough that when the real conversation happens, it feels like a repeat performance. Other times, they've had the conversation so many times internally that they're exhausted by it before it even happens in reality, and they end up avoiding it altogether because they've already experienced it 20 times in their head. This constant internal dialogue is both a gift and a curse. It helps them process complex emotions and make thoughtful decisions, but it also means they're never truly alone. Even in complete solitude, there's always someone talking, and that someone is them. Fact 11. They replay conversations on an endless loop. After any significant social interaction, a prudent introvert's brain immediately hits the replay button, and it doesn't stop. That conversation from this morning, they've already analyzed it 17 times. They're replaying the exact moment they made that joke and watching everyone's reactions frame by frame. Did Sarah actually laugh, or was that a pity laugh? Why did Michael look away right after? Was the joke offensive? Too awkward? They're dissecting their own tone of voice, wondering if they sounded confident or desperate for approval. They remember that 3-second pause before someone responded to their comment, and now they're constructing elaborate theories about what that pause meant. Maybe it meant nothing, or maybe it meant everything. The worst part is when they remember something they said and physically cringe. Their whole body reacts to the memory. They'll be doing dishes 3 days later and suddenly recall that slightly awkward thing they said, and their face contorts. They might actually groan out loud. Why did I say it like that? Why didn't I just say this instead? And now they're rewriting the conversation, creating the perfect version that will never happen because it's already over. They'll replay arguments they had years ago, finally thinking of the perfect comeback, the devastating response that would have ended the debate. Except it's 2019 and that moment is gone forever. Sometimes they'll even apologize for things no one else remembers or noticed. They'll say, "Hey, sorry if I was weird the other day," and the other person will have no idea what they're talking about because it was so minor it didn't even register. But for the prudent introvert, it's been playing on loop for 72 hours straight.
This constant replay serves a purpose. They're trying to learn, to improve, to understand social dynamics better. But it also means they can never fully let go of interactions. Every conversation lives on in their mind, being analyzed, criticized, and archived forever.
Fact 12. They can sense when someone is lying. Prudent introverts are human lie detectors, but not because they're suspicious. It's because they notice micro inconsistencies that others miss. When someone tells them a story, they're not just listening to the words, they're building a mental model of events, timeline, motivations, and logic. And when something doesn't fit, their brain flags it immediately. It might be a tiny detail. Someone said they were at the gym Tuesday morning, but earlier they mentioned having a breakfast meeting Tuesday. Most people wouldn't catch that, but a prudent introvert's brain automatically cross-references everything, and suddenly there's a mismatch in the database. They notice when someone's facial expression doesn't match their words. The person says they're excited about something, but their eyes are flat, their smile is tight, their voice has that forced brightness that sounds like it's coming from a script. They catch the micropause before someone answers a direct question, that split second where the person is constructing their response rather than simply recalling the truth. They notice when details change between tellings of the same story, when enthusiasm feels performed, when someone is working too hard to convince them of something. Here's the uncomfortable part. Once they sense the lie, they can't unknow it. They're stuck with this information, having to decide what to do with it. Do they call it out and risk the confrontation? Do they pretend they don't notice and maintain the relationship but lose respect for the person? Do they start pulling away without explanation? They'll often choose option 3, quietly creating distance, because confronting a liar usually just results in more elaborate lies. The hardest part is that they can't turn this ability off. They'll catch their friend in a small white lie about why they can't hang out, and even though it's harmless, even though they don't care about the real reason, the lie itself becomes a data point, a crack in the foundation of trust. And prudent introverts have excellent memories for these cracks. They accumulate over time, and eventually the whole structure feels unstable.
Fact 13. They create exit strategies before entering any situation. Before a prudent introvert walks into any room, party, meeting, or gathering, they've already mapped out how they'll leave. This isn't pessimism, it's preparation. They need to know they have control over their exit, that they're not trapped. At a party, they've identified multiple extraction points. The early meeting tomorrow excuse, classic, reliable. The not feeling well emergency exit, reserved for dire situations. The have to call someone back medium priority escape, works for short-term extraction and potential return. They've noted where the door is, calculated the social cost of leaving at different times. Leaving in the first 30 minutes looks rude. Leaving at the 2-hour mark is acceptable. Staying past 3 hours might create expectations for future events. They're constantly monitoring their internal energy levels like a fuel gauge, knowing they may be 90 minutes of quality social interaction before they start running on fumes. They've even planned their goodbye route, who they need to thank, who they can wave to from a distance, who will try to extend the conversation, and how to politely shut that down. At work meetings, they sit near the door when possible, not to be rude, but so they can leave without climbing over people if they need to. They calculate bathroom break timing to avoid suspicious patterns. In restaurants, they prefer booths where they can see the exit, where they won't feel boxed in. This constant exit awareness might seem paranoid to others, but for them it's comfort. Knowing they can leave makes it easier to stay. The irony is that they rarely use these exit strategies. Just having them makes situations more tolerable. But when they do need to execute an exit plan, it's smooth.
practiced, almost elegant. They've rehearsed it so many times in their head that the real thing is just a performance of a well-known script. People barely notice them leaving because they've designed it that way. One moment they're there, the next they've evaporated, and everyone just assumes they said goodbye to someone else.
Fact 14. They absorb other people's emotions like a sponge. Walk into a room where two people just had an argument, and a prudent introvert will feel it immediately, even if both people are smiling and pretending everything is fine. The emotional residue hangs in the air like humidity, and they absorb it without meaning to. They're unintentional empaths, constantly picking up on the emotional frequencies around them. When someone near them is anxious, they start feeling anxious too, even if they have nothing to be anxious about. When someone's sad, that sadness seeps into them, coloring their own mood. It's not that they're trying to feel what others feel, they just can't help it. Their emotional boundaries are more like semi-permeable membranes than walls. This makes them incredibly compassionate friends. They don't just sympathize, they actually experience a shadow version of what you're going through. When you tell them about your problem, they're not just listening, they're feeling the weight of it with you. But this gift is exhausting. After spending time with someone who's stressed, they leave feeling drained and tense, carrying emotional weight that isn't even theirs. They'll come home from a normal day and feel inexplicably heavy, only to realize they've been absorbing everyone's emotional states all day. Their coworkers' frustration, their friends' disappointment, the tension from that couple arguing in the coffee shop. Sometimes they can't even tell which emotions are actually theirs and which ones they've picked up from others. They'll feel inexplicably sad and have to trace it back. Wait, why am I sad? Oh, because I talked to Jessica this morning and she was upset about her breakup and I absorbed that. This emotional porousness means they need significant alone time, not just to recharge their social battery, but to emotionally detoxify, to let all those absorbed feelings drain away so they can find their own emotional baseline again. It's like they spend all day walking through emotional rain, and they need time alone to dry off.
Fact 15. They overthink gifts to the point of paralysis. For a prudent introvert, buying someone a gift isn't a simple transaction. It's a complex operation with incredibly high stakes. They're not just thinking, what would they like? They're constructing an entire psychological profile and running simulations. The gift needs to show they pay attention, but not in a creepy way. Demonstrate they care, but not come across as trying too hard. Be thoughtful, but not so personal it makes things weird. Be useful, but not boring. Be meaningful, but not overly sentimental. They'll spend hours researching options, reading reviews, comparing alternatives. They'll think about the subtext of every choice, like, if I get them this book, does it imply I think they need to learn something? If I get them this mug, is that too impersonal? If I get them something expensive, will they feel obligated? If I get them something cheap, will they think I don't value them? They're analyzing the relationship dynamics. We've been friends for 2 years, so what's the appropriate gift investment level? Last year, they got me something worth about $40, so should I match that exactly? Go slightly above? Or would going above create weird obligation dynamics? They'll remember every gift this person has ever mentioned liking, every casual comment about wanting something, every interest they've expressed. And then they'll worry that remembering all this is weird. They'll draft text messages asking subtle questions to gather more intel, then delete them because they don't want to ruin the surprise or seem like they're overthinking it, which they absolutely are.
The worst part? After all this analysis, they'll second-guess their choice right up until and even after they give it. They'll watch the person's face as they open it, analyzing every micro-expression. That smile looked genuine. Or was it? They paused before saying thank you. What does that pause mean? Should I have gotten them the other thing? And weeks later, they'll notice the person hasn't mentioned or used the gift, and they'll spiral into wondering if they completely missed the mark despite all that preparation. Sometimes they get so paralyzed by the analysis that they end up buying something at the last minute anyway, which defeats the entire purpose of all that overthinking.
Fact 16. They're experts at reading between the lines. When someone says, "I'm fine," most people take it at face value. A prudent introvert hears an entire paragraph of unspoken information. They're fluent in subtext, innuendo, and implication, not because they're paranoid, but because they've learned that what people say and what people mean are often completely different things. Someone texts "no worries," and they immediately decode it. The exclamation point is doing too much work, which suggests there are worries, they're just being polite about it. The phrase is too enthusiastic for the context, which means it's compensating for actual disappointment. Someone says, "we should hang out sometime," and they know that "sometime" is a polite fiction. If the person wanted to actually hang out, they'd suggest an actual time. The word "should" instead of "let's" indicates obligation rather than genuine desire. When a friend says, "I'm not mad," they catch the subtle emphasis on "mad," which means they might not be mad, but they're definitely something. Hurt, disappointed, frustrated. They notice when "I'll think about it" really means "no, but I don't want to say no directly." They understand that "interesting" often means "I hate this, but I'm being polite." They recognize when "maybe" is a soft no, when "we'll see" means "I'm hoping you'll forget you asked," and when "I'm just really busy right now" means "I'm avoiding you specifically." This isn't cynicism, it's pattern recognition refined over years of paying attention. They've learned that communication happens on multiple levels simultaneously: the literal words, the tone, the context, the history between people, the timing, what's not being said. While others listen to the words, prudent introverts are reading the entire composition, and usually the most important information isn't in the words at all. The challenge is that sometimes they're so good at reading subtext that they find messages that aren't there. They'll overanalyze a simple statement, finding layers of meaning the speaker never intended. Or they'll catch real subtext but have no socially acceptable way to acknowledge it. They can't say, "I know you said you're fine, but your tone and word choice indicate you're actually upset," because that sounds accusatory. So they're stuck with information they can't act on, watching people pretend while knowing exactly what's really happening underneath.
Fact 17. They practice conversations in the shower. The shower is a prudent introvert's rehearsal space, strategic planning room, and emotional processing center all in one. Under the running water, where no one can hear them, they have full conversations with people who aren't there. They're rehearsing the difficult talk they need to have with their boss, playing both parts. "I've been thinking about my workload," and then she'll probably say, "so I'll respond with this." They're redoing yesterday's awkward interaction, but this time with perfect responses and perfect timing. They finally have that comeback they needed. They're preparing for a conversation that might never happen, but could happen, so they better be ready. The shower provides the perfect environment for this: private, acoustic, their voice sounds good, and a built-in time limit that creates productive pressure. They'll rehearse text messages out loud, testing different phrasings. Does this sound too needy? What about this version? No, too casual. Maybe. They'll practice apologizing, explaining, confronting, confessing, all while shampooing their hair.
Sometimes they get so deep into the imaginary conversation that they actually feel the emotions. They'll get genuinely upset during a pretend argument, or feel relief during a simulated resolution of a conflict that hasn't happened yet. The water running sounds like white noise, helping them focus. The steam creates a kind of isolation chamber where the outside world fades and their internal world becomes vivid and immediate. They've solved problems, made decisions, processed emotions, and prepared for battles, all while technically just getting clean. The ironic part is that after all this rehearsal, the actual conversation rarely goes according to script. The other person says something unexpected, and suddenly all that shower prep is useless. But somehow the rehearsal still helps, not because they use the exact words they practiced, but because they've mentally walked through the scenario enough times that they feel slightly more prepared, slightly less anxious, slightly more in control. And that's worth the extra long shower and the confused look from their roommate who wonders why they take 45 minutes to wash their hair.
Fact 18. They can predict how situations will end. A prudent introvert can often see the ending before the middle even happens. They're watching a friend get into a new relationship, and within 2 weeks they can predict with eerie accuracy that it'll end in about 4 months because they've spotted the fundamental incompatibility nobody else sees yet. They're listening to someone's business plan and can already see the failure point, not because they're pessimistic, but because they've mentally run the simulation and found the flaw in the logic. Their brain is constantly running probability calculations based on patterns they've observed over years. They know that when their coworker starts complaining about management using certain specific phrases, they're about 3 weeks away from quitting because they've seen this pattern before. They can sense when a friendship is entering its final phase because the interaction patterns have shifted in ways that indicate drift. When someone tells them about a fight they had, they can often predict whether the relationship will recover or not based on specific details about how the fight went down. Not what the fight was about, but how both people fought. They're reading the structure, the dynamics, the underlying patterns that most people miss. The frustrating part is that they usually can't do anything with this information. Warning someone that their relationship is doomed sounds judgmental and ruins the friendship. Telling someone their plan will fail sounds unsupportive. So they stay quiet, watching the future unfold exactly as they predicted, unable to intervene. Sometimes they try to subtly steer things. Have you thought about, or what if? But people rarely listen to warnings about futures they can't see yet. And then, months later, when the predicted outcome happens, people will turn to them for comfort or advice, and the prudent introvert has to pretend to be surprised by something they saw coming from miles away. They've learned that being right about bad outcomes doesn't make anyone feel better. It just makes them seem like they were rooting for failure. So they keep their predictions to themselves, watching timelines play out like movies they've already seen, hoping occasionally to be proven wrong, but rarely being surprised.
Fact 19. They have entire relationships in their head that never happen. A prudent introvert can have a complete, complex, emotionally rich relationship with someone they've barely spoken to. They've noticed someone, maybe a classmate, a coworker, someone at the coffee shop, and their brain has already constructed an entire alternate timeline. They've imagined the first conversation in detail, how they'd introduce themselves, what common ground they'd discover, how the other person would laugh at that one perfectly timed joke. They've fast-forwarded through early dates they'll never go on, imagined lazy Sunday mornings they'll never share, constructed inside jokes that will never exist. They know how this imaginary relationship would feel, comfortable, easy, right, because they've simulated it with the same detail they apply to everything else. They've assigned personality traits based on minimal observations, the way someone holds their coffee, their choice of book, how they interact with others. From these fragments, they've built a complete character profile and fallen a little bit in love with their own construction. The cruel irony is that the imaginary relationship is so well developed that the prospect of the real thing becomes terrifying. What if the real person doesn't match the version they've created? What if the actual conversation is awkward instead of flowing naturally like it does in their head? The fantasy is perfect, safe, controllable. Reality is none of those things. So they stay quiet. They never make that first move. They let the opportunity pass because the risk of ruining the perfect imaginary relationship feels too high. And then they watch as the person dates someone else, and they feel genuinely heartbroken over losing something they never actually had. They'll mourn this phantom relationship, this path not taken, with real grief. Years later, they'll still wonder, what if? Not about what could have really happened, but about whether reality would have lived up to the simulation. The saddest part is that they know they're doing this. They can see themselves constructing fantasy relationships instead of pursuing real ones. But the pattern persists because the imaginary is so much safer than the actual. In their head, they've had a dozen perfect relationships. In reality, they're still waiting for the courage to say hello.
Fact 20. They know exactly when they've become too much for someone. There's a specific moment when a prudent introvert realizes they've crossed a line they didn't even know was there. They've shared too much, cared too hard, invested too deeply, and they can pinpoint the exact second it happened. They're talking, opening up maybe more than usual, sharing something they care about, and they catch it, the micro expression of disconnect. The other person's eyes glaze over slightly, their smile becomes fixed, their has a different rhythm. That subtle lean back instead of lean in. The energy shift is unmistakable. The introvert's brain immediately catalogs this as a critical error. Too much. You're being too much. Retreat. Retreat now. What makes this particularly painful is the instant replay that follows. They'll rewind the conversation in their head, identifying the exact moment they lost the person. It was when I started explaining the third reason. That's when their interest died. Or maybe it was earlier, when I showed too much enthusiasm, or when I assumed they'd care about this as much as I do. They've learned that their natural intensity, the depth of their thoughts, the complexity of their analysis, the strength of their feelings can overwhelm people who operate on a surface level. So they've become experts at dimming themselves, rationing their personality, showing only acceptable doses of who they really are. They've learned to watch for that moment of too much and immediately course correct, change the subject, make a joke, deflect attention, ask about the other person instead. They've perfected the art of the strategic retreat. But here's the heartbreak. They never quite know where the line is until after they've crossed it. Every person has a different tolerance level for depth, intensity, earnestness. What's perfectly fine with one person is overwhelming to another. So they're constantly calibrating, trying to gauge how much of themselves is acceptable in each relationship. And over time, this creates an exhausting internal moderator, a part of them that's always monitoring, always ready to pull back, always afraid of being too much. They start to believe that their natural state is excessive, that who they really are is somehow inherently too intense for normal consumption. They learn to perform a lighter version of themselves, saving the full intensity version for the rare person who can handle it, or more often, keeping it entirely private, shared with no one. Fact 21. They curate their personality for different people. A prudent introvert doesn't have one consistent personality. They have a carefully curated collection, each version tailored to specific people and contexts. It's not being fake,
It's strategic authenticity. With their work colleagues, they're the professional, competent version, measured responses, appropriate enthusiasm, just enough personality to seem human, but not so much that it invites deep personal questions. With their family, they're different configuration. The responsible one, the listener, the person who has it together even when they don't. With close friends, they allow more layers to show, but even then, they're selective. Friend A gets the intellectual side. They can discuss philosophy and ideas. Friend B gets the humor and pop culture references. Friend C gets vulnerability, but only certain types. No single person gets the complete picture because the complete picture feels too intense, too complicated, too much to manage. They've learned that different people can handle different aspects of who they are, so they portion themselves out accordingly. This isn't conscious manipulation, it's adaptive behavior learned from years of watching people's reactions and adjusting accordingly. They've noticed their coworker loves when they're funny, but gets uncomfortable with serious topics, so they're funny around that person. They've learned their mom prefers the optimistic version, so they filter out the existential dread. The exhausting part is keeping track of which version they've shown to whom. They'll sometimes slip and reference something with the wrong person. Oh wait, I didn't tell you about that, I told Sarah. You're not the person who knows about my writing. They have to remember who knows what, who's allowed to see which sides, who can't handle certain aspects. It's like running multiple simultaneous social media accounts, each with different content for different audiences. The deepest loneliness comes from wondering if anyone actually knows the real them, or if the real them even exists anymore, or if they've become just this collection of curated versions, each one genuine, but none of them complete. They sometimes fantasize about being understood fully by one person, someone who could handle all the versions simultaneously, but that feels impossibly rare. So they continue the curation, showing each person exactly what that person can handle, and keeping the full, unedited version locked away in their own head, where it's safe, but also profoundly alone. Fact 22. They catastrophize in vivid detail. When something goes wrong, or might go wrong, a prudent introvert's brain doesn't just worry, it creates a full-budget disaster film with multiple acts and devastating cinematography. They don't think this could be bad. They immediately jump to the most catastrophic possible outcome, and then work backward, imagining every step of the nightmare scenario in painful detail. Their friend doesn't text back for 3 hours? Their brain has already concluded, they're mad at me. No, worse, they've decided I'm exhausting and are planning how to ghost me. They're probably talking to other friends right now about how annoying I am. By next week, I'll be completely cut off. In 6 months, I'll see them with their new friend group, and they'll pretend not to know me. All of this from one unreturned text. They make a small mistake at work. Within seconds, they've imagined the chain reaction. My boss noticed. She's documenting this. She's probably already discussing it with HR. I'll be put on a performance improvement plan. I'll fail that. I'll get fired. I won't be able to find another job. I'll lose my apartment. I'll have to move back with my parents. My entire life will unravel because of this one typo in this one email. The catastrophizing isn't just abstract worry, it's sensory and specific. They can see the conversation where they get fired. They can feel the humiliation. They can hear the disappointed tone in their parents' voice when they have to ask to move back home. Their brain creates such vivid disaster scenarios that their body responds with real stress hormones, real anxiety, real grief for futures that haven't happened and probably never will. The rational part of their brain knows this is excessive. They can observe themselves catastrophizing and think, this is ridiculous, stop it. But knowing it's irrational doesn't stop the process. The disaster film keeps playing. And here's the cruelest part. Occasionally, rarely, one of their catastrophic predictions actually comes true. not because they're psychic, but because statistics say that eventually something bad will happen. And when it does, their brain takes that as validation. See, I was right to worry. I should worry more, not less. My catastrophizing is protective. So the pattern reinforces itself, and they're trapped in a cycle of imagining worst-case scenarios that almost never happen but feel completely real.
Fact 23. They remember every social mistake they've ever made. A prudent introvert has a permanent archive of every awkward thing they've ever said or done, organized chronologically and available for instant replay at 3 a.m. That weird thing they said in 7th grade, perfectly preserved. The time they waved at someone who wasn't waving at them, filed under Mortifying Moments 2019. The joke that landed wrong at a party 4 years ago, available in HD with full sensory detail. These memories don't fade. They remain vivid and painful, ready to ambush them at random moments. They'll be having a perfectly normal day, and suddenly their brain serves up a memory from 2012, that time they called their teacher Mom in front of the whole class. And now they're cringing so hard they have to physically shake their head to dispel the memory, making concerned strangers wonder what's wrong with them. The archive has categories. Things I said that sounded smarter in my head, inappropriate laughter at serious moments, times I misread the room completely, hugs that went wrong, and things I thought were whispers but weren't. Each category is extensively populated. What makes this particularly torturous is that no one else remembers these moments. They'll apologize for something that happened years ago, and the other person will have no idea what they're talking about. Remember when I said that weird thing at your birthday party? No? But the prudent introvert remembers. Oh, they remember everything, in perfect, excruciating detail. They can tell you what everyone was wearing, where they were standing, the exact phrasing of their mistake, and the specific quality of the silence that followed. They've analyzed these moments thousands of times, each replay adding another layer of embarrassment. Why did I say it like that? What was I thinking? Why didn't I just stay quiet? The worst part is knowing that while they're torturing themselves over these ancient mistakes, they're probably making new ones that will join the archive. Future them will cringe over present them, just like present them cringes over past them. It's an endless cycle of social mistake collection, and the archive never stops growing. Sometimes they wonder if other people have this same archive, or if everyone else just forgets, moves on, lives life without carrying a complete catalog of every embarrassing moment they've ever experienced. That must be nice.
Fact 24. They need to decompress after every social interaction. After any social interaction, even positive ones, a prudent introvert needs a specific decompression ritual. It's not optional. Their brain has been running multiple programs simultaneously for hours, monitoring conversation flow, reading body language, moderating their own behavior, processing incoming information, generating appropriate responses, managing their energy display, and maintaining their persona. When the interaction ends, all those programs don't just close, they need to be properly shut down, and that takes time in specific conditions. Some people can leave a party and immediately go to another event. A prudent introvert leaves a party and needs to sit in their car in complete silence for 15 minutes, just staring at nothing, letting their nervous system reset. They need the transition space between the performance and real life. When they get home, they have a specific sequence. Change into comfort clothes immediately, the social costume must come off. No talking, even to roommates or partners. Sorry, but the talking program is offline. And often just lying on the floor or bed in complete darkness. They're not sad or upset, they're processing. Their brain is still running the post-game analysis, replaying conversations, analyzing their performance, noting mistakes, updating their social models, filing away new information about people. It's like a computer running a defragmentation process, necessary maintenance that requires all other programs to pause.
During this time, any additional input feels overwhelming. A roommate asking, "How was it?" requires rebooting the speaking program, which costs energy they don't have. A text message asking them to make a decision feels impossible. The decision-making capacity is fully depleted. Even simple choices like "what do you want for dinner" can trigger a small internal crisis because they literally cannot compute one more choice right now. The decompression time varies based on the intensity and duration of the social interaction. Coffee with one person, 30-minute reset. Work meeting, 1 hour. Social gathering, 2 to 4 hours. Wedding or all-day event, complete next-day shutdown required. And here's what people don't understand. This isn't negotiable. They need this decompression or they'll malfunction. Skip the reset and the next social interaction will be significantly worse. They'll be running on a system that hasn't properly shut down from the last one, leading to crashes, errors, and generally poor performance. But this need makes them seem antisocial or weird. They have to decline evening plans because they haven't finished decompressing from afternoon plans. They can't just quickly do one more thing. The tank is empty. The system is offline. Check back tomorrow after the full reboot.
Fact 25. They can feel friendship fading months before it ends. A prudent introvert can sense a friendship dying long before the final goodbye, sometimes before the other person even realizes it's happening. It starts with tiny shifts that most people wouldn't notice. Response times getting slightly longer, enthusiasm in texts decreasing by barely measurable degrees, invitations becoming less specific, like "we should hang out sometime," instead of "are you free Saturday?" Conversations staying surface level when they used to go deep. They track these changes like a seismologist monitoring tremors before an earthquake. They notice when someone stops sharing certain things with them, not dramatically, just gradually. The friend used to tell them about work drama immediately. Now they hear about it days later, secondhand. They used to be invited automatically to group things. Now they have to hear about it after and pretend they didn't notice being excluded. The friend used to send them random memes or songs that made them think of each other. Now weeks pass with only transactional messages. Each small change gets logged, analyzed, compared against the baseline of how the friendship used to be, and the pattern is unmistakable. This is a friendship in decline. But here's the torture. They can't do anything about it. If they bring it up, they sound needy or paranoid. "I've noticed you take longer to respond now," sounds accusatory and desperate. If they increase their own effort to compensate, they risk seeming clingy, which might accelerate the fade. If they match the decreased energy, they're accepting the death of the friendship. There's no good move, so they watch it happen in slow motion. They see the friend investing that energy elsewhere, new people, new interests, new priorities. And they understand, really, because people grow apart. Lives change. But understanding doesn't make it hurt less. They find themselves in this limbo period where the friendship isn't officially over, but it's clearly ending. They're still technically friends, but the substance is gone. And the prudent introvert is stuck deciding, do they address it directly and risk an awkward conversation that might kill it faster? Do they gradually fade as well, making it mutual? Do they hold on and hope it's just a phase? Usually, they choose a painful middle ground. They stay available, keep showing up, but start emotionally preparing for the end they can see coming. They begin grief work for a friendship that's still technically alive. And then, months later, when it finally ends, either with a conversation or just a complete fade into nothing, everyone else is surprised, but the prudent introvert isn't. They've been watching it die frame by frame for half a year.
Fact 26. They rehearse conversations that will never happen. A prudent introvert spends an unreasonable amount of mental energy preparing for conversations that have a 90% chance of never occurring. They're lying in bed at night, crafting the perfect response to an argument that hasn't happened yet. In the shower, they're rehearsing exactly what they'll say if their boss criticizes their work, complete with 3 different versions depending on tone. They prepare for difficult talks with friends, scripting line by line, anticipating every response and counter-response. It's full theatrical rehearsal. Opening line perfected, main points organized, evidence ready, tone calibrated, backup points prepared. And then the conversation either never happens or happens completely differently, rendering all that rehearsal useless. The mental rehearsal becomes so elaborate they sometimes forget whether a conversation actually happened or if they just imagined it so vividly. Wait, did I already tell them this, or did I just practice telling them? The rehearsed version feels as real as actual memory. And occasionally, very occasionally, a conversation does happen exactly as rehearsed, and for a brief, glorious moment, they feel like a genius. This validates the entire system, ensuring they'll continue rehearsing imaginary conversations for the rest of their lives, even though 95% will never occur.
Fact 27. They can't accept compliments without analyzing them. When someone compliments a prudent introvert, their immediate response isn't gratitude, it's suspicion and analysis. Someone says, "Great job on that presentation," and while their mouth says, "Thank you," their brain is running full diagnostics. Do they really mean it? They said great, not amazing. Does that mean it was just okay? Their tone seemed genuine, but their smile looked forced. Are they just being polite? Is this pity? Are they softening me up before criticism? They can't just receive the compliment at face value. Every positive comment gets dissected for hidden meanings, ulterior motives, or evidence of insincerity. If it's too enthusiastic, it must be fake. Too casual, obligatory. Too specific, trying too hard. They deflect immediately like, "Oh, it was nothing," or "I just got lucky," or "anyone could have done it," while internally running forensic analysis. The worst part is when they do believe a compliment, they worry they're being arrogant or naive. And if someone compliments them multiple times, that's definitely suspicious. No one is that consistently positive unless they want something. The irony is brutal. They desperately want genuine appreciation, but they've built such sophisticated detection systems for insincerity that they can't recognize sincerity when it arrives. Fact 28. They have a mental catalog of safe topics. A prudent introvert has a carefully curated list of conversationally safe topics they can deploy at a moment's notice. These aren't necessarily things they care deeply about. They're topics that reliably generate acceptable small talk without risk of controversy, awkwardness, or accidentally revealing too much about themselves. Weather? Always safe. Recent popular TV show everyone's watching? Solid choice. That weird news story everyone saw? Perfect neutral ground. They've tested these topics across multiple social contexts and confirmed they work. They generate enough engagement to seem social, but not so much depth that they get exhausted or trapped in long conversations. They rotate through their approved list like a DJ with a set list, always ready to fill awkward silences or redirect conversations that are heading into dangerous territory. Someone asks about their personal life? Deploy safe topic. Conversation getting too deep? Switch to safe topic. Running out of energy? Safe topic buys time. The catalog gets updated regularly based on what's currently culturally relevant. They're not genuinely interested in this season's baking show, but enough people are talking about it that it's now in rotation. The sad part is, they have a completely different list of topics they actually care about. Obscure interests, deep philosophical questions, weird observations about life. But those are high-risk conversational moves reserved for very specific people in very specific contexts.
So they keep serving the safe topics to most people while filing away the things they really want to talk about, knowing most conversations will never go there.
Fact 29. They replay every interaction looking for mistakes. After any social interaction, a prudent introvert immediately begins the post-game analysis. They replay the entire conversation in their head, examining every moment for potential mistakes, awkward pauses, or things they should have said differently. Why did I laugh like that? Did I interrupt them? Was my story too long? Did I seem interested enough? Did I seem too interested? The analysis is exhaustive and unforgiving. They'll identify the exact moment they lost the thread of conversation, the joke that didn't land quite right, the time they said "you too" when it didn't make sense. Each error gets cataloged, rated by severity, and filed away as a lesson for next time. The problem is their mistake detection system is hypersensitive. It flags things that probably weren't mistakes at all. They'll agonize over a 2-second pause that the other person didn't even notice. They'll convince themselves they were boring when the other person genuinely enjoyed the conversation. Their internal reviewer gives harsh ratings. Social performance, C-, multiple errors detected, improvement needed. And while they're doing this brutal self-assessment, the other person has probably forgotten the entire interaction and moved on with their day. But the prudent introvert can't move on. They're stuck in analysis mode, replaying and reviewing, making notes on what to avoid next time, preparing amendments to their social protocols, and generally treating a casual coffee chat like it was a championship game that they lost.
Fact 30. They're exhausted by people who need constant validation. A prudent introvert finds few things more draining than people who require continuous emotional maintenance. These are the people who fish for compliments constantly, who turn every conversation back to their problems, who need reassurance after every decision, who create drama to get attention. The introvert can handle occasional support, that's what friends do. But there's a type of person whose need for validation is bottomless, and interacting with them feels like pouring energy into a black hole. The exhausting part is that these people often target introverts specifically because introverts are good listeners and tend to be empathetic and thoughtful. They sense someone who will actually pay attention, and they latch on. Every text becomes a crisis. Every hangout becomes a therapy session. Every conversation requires the introvert to perform emotional labor. You're not stupid. You look great. You made the right choice. They're the problem, not you. And if the introvert tries to set boundaries or doesn't respond with sufficient enthusiasm, the validation seeker gets hurt or passive-aggressive, adding guilt to the exhaustion. The introvert starts dreading their messages, starts crafting careful responses to avoid triggering another need spiral, starts feeling like they're managing a crisis hotline instead of maintaining a friendship. What's particularly frustrating is watching these people ignore advice, make the same mistakes repeatedly, and continue the same patterns. They don't actually want solutions, they want endless validation. Eventually, the prudent introvert has to make a choice, continue being drained, or distance themselves and deal with the guilt of abandoning someone who needs them. Either way, they lose energy they can't afford to spare.
Fact 31. They can read a room in 3 seconds flat. A prudent introvert walks into any space and immediately absorbs everything. Who's allied with whom, where the tension is, who's faking enthusiasm, who actually wants to be there, what's been said before they arrived based on the energy shift when they enter. Within seconds, they've mapped the entire social topology. They notice the person standing slightly outside the circle who wants to leave, the two people who are clearly in a silent argument, the host who's overwhelmed but performing fine.
the guest who's dominating conversation while others politely suffer. They catch micro-expressions, body language, tone shifts, strategic positioning. They see the invisible dynamics that others miss entirely. While everyone else is taking things at face value, the introvert has already decoded 3 layers of subtext and identified 2 exits. This isn't paranoia, it's pattern recognition honed by years of observation. When you spend more time watching than performing, you learn to read what's actually happening beneath what's being said. They can predict who will leave first, who will start drama, who's about to make things awkward, and they use this information strategically, positioning themselves near safe people, avoiding collision courses, timing their own exit. People think they're quiet, but really they're running advanced social analytics in real time. By the time someone else notices tension, the introvert has already logged it, analyzed it, and planned around it.
Fact 32. They're calculating while you're talking. Prudent introverts aren't quiet because they have nothing to say. They're running advanced simulations in their heads. While everyone else is brainstorming out loud, they're silently stress-testing every idea for flaws, considering long-term consequences, and mapping out contingency plans. People mistake their silence for disengagement, but they're actually 3 steps ahead, playing chess while others are playing checkers. When they finally speak, it's not an opinion, it's a fully architected strategy that makes everyone else's suggestions look like rough drafts. And the wildest part? They've often already anticipated the objections you're about to raise. Fact 33. They see patterns others miss. Because prudent introverts spend more time observing than performing, they notice the subtle details everyone else glosses over. They'll spot the inconsistency in someone's story, catch the flaw in a business plan during slide 2, or predict how a situation will unfold based on micro-patterns nobody else registered. People think they're just shy, but they're actually collecting data like silent analysts at a crime scene. By the time someone asks for their input, they've already solved the problem everyone else is still trying to understand. Their superpower isn't talking, it's seeing what's invisible to the noisemakers. Fact 34. Their risk assessment is annoyingly accurate. Prudent introverts have an almost psychic ability to sense when something's going to backfire, and they're usually right. They're not pessimists, they're just wired to spot vulnerabilities and calculate probabilities before acting, like human lie detectors for bad ideas. While impulsive people chase shiny opportunities, prudent introverts are quietly evaluating exit strategies, hidden costs, and the 12 ways this could implode. Others call them overthinkers or party poopers until their warnings come true. Then suddenly everyone's in the wreckage asking, why didn't we listen to them? Spoiler, they did tell you, you just weren't listening.
Fact 35. They remember everything you said, even years later. Prudent introverts have memory vaults that would terrify most people. They'll recall an offhand comment you made 3 years ago and connect it to something happening now. It's not that they're creepy, they just process conversations deeply instead of skimming the surface. While extroverts collect hundreds of shallow interactions, introverts archive fewer conversations, but with forensic detail. Mention you're struggling with something, they'll remember and follow up months later, which either makes you feel incredibly seen or slightly uncomfortable that someone actually pays attention.
Fact 36. Their silence is a strategic weapon. When a prudent introvert goes quiet in a meeting or argument, amateurs think they've won. Wrong. That silence is them watching you reveal your hand, expose your weaknesses, and talk yourself into corners. They've learned that people fill silence with truth, desperation, or mistakes, so they just wait. It's psychological warfare disguised as shyness. By the time they respond, they've gathered enough intel to dismantle your position with surgical precision, and you'll wonder how someone who barely said anything just completely outmaneuvered you. Fact 37. They prepare for conversations like it's a trial. Before any important conversation, prudent introverts run mental dress rehearsals that would exhaust normal people. They anticipate questions, prepare responses, consider emotional reactions, and have backup talking points ready. What looks like natural eloquence is actually hours of invisible prep work. While spontaneous people wing it, prudent introverts have already fought this conversation 12 times in the shower. The result, they rarely get caught off guard, stumble over words, or regret what they said, because they've already stress-tested every sentence.
Fact 38. They're masters of strategic retreat. Prudent introverts know exactly when to exit a situation before it drains them or turns toxic. They've calculated their energy expenditure, assessed whether staying adds value, and identified the socially acceptable escape route, all while you're still debating whether to order another drink. People mistake this for flakiness, but it's actually brilliant resource management. They're not antisocial. They're efficiently allocating their limited social battery to relationships and situations that actually matter, rather than wasting it on obligations that serve nobody.
Fact 39. Their written communication is lethal. Put a prudent introvert behind a keyboard and watch them transform into a completely different person. Suddenly, the quiet one is crafting emails that change minds, texts that cut through confusion, and documents that become company policy. Writing gives them time to refine thoughts without the pressure of real-time response, and they weaponize it. They'll spend 20 minutes perfecting a 2-sentence message that lands with the impact of a TED Talk. Their colleagues wonder why the person who barely speaks in meetings writes like they're negotiating international treaties. Fact 40. They can read a room in 30 seconds. Walk into any space with a prudent introvert, and they've already mapped the social dynamics before you've found the bathroom. Who holds the real power? Who's pretending? Which alliances exist? Where the tension is? They've cataloged it all through micro-expressions and body language. Extroverts are busy making entrances. Introverts are collecting intelligence. This radar for unspoken dynamics makes them invaluable in negotiations, team building, or any situation where understanding the invisible matters more than being the loudest voice. Fact 41. Their yes means something. When a prudent introvert commits to something, it's been through an internal Shinsa process more rigorous than a bank loan application. They've considered their capacity, assessed the value, evaluated alternatives, and determined they can deliver. So when they say yes, they mean it, and they'll follow through with a reliability that makes flaky extroverts look like toddlers. Conversely, their no isn't personal. It's simply the output of their cost-benefit analysis. They're not being difficult. They're being honest about what they can sustain without burning out. Fact 42. They excel in crisis when everyone else panics. While chaos sends most people into reactive mode, prudent introverts suddenly become the calmest person in the room. All that overthinking they do daily, it's basically crisis training. They've already imagined 17 disaster scenarios, so when one actually happens, they're oddly prepared. Their stress response isn't to flail or shout, it's to process, prioritize, and execute. Suddenly, the anxious overthinker is the person giving clear instructions while everyone else is losing their minds, proving that anxiety and competence aren't opposites. Fact 43. They hate small talk, but will destroy you in deep conversation. Ask a prudent introvert about the weather and watch them suffer. Ask them about philosophy, systems theory, or why humans behave irrationally, and they'll talk for 3 hours with 0 notes. Small talk feels like sandpaper to them because it's information-free social theater. They're waiting for the real conversation to start. But once you go deep, they'll present ideas so well-formed that you'll question your entire worldview. They don't chat, they engage, dissect, and reconstruct topics until everyone involved has learned something. Fact 44. Their alone time is actually productive. When prudent introverts disappear to recharge, they're not just staring at walls. They're processing the week's interactions, connecting disparate ideas, solving problems that stumped them, and generating insights that extroverts miss because they never stop moving. Solitude is their laboratory for thought. That breakthrough idea in Monday's meeting, they figured it out during Saturday's silent coffee ritual. Their alone time isn't laziness. It's the cognitive heavy lifting that makes their public contributions so valuable. Fact 45. They choose friends like investors choose stocks. Prudent introverts don't collect acquaintances. They curate a small portfolio of meaningful relationships with the care of a museum selecting art. They're assessing compatibility, shared values, mutual growth potential, and long-term viability before they invest emotional energy. It sounds cold, but it's actually the opposite. They take friendships so seriously that they won't waste your time or theirs on shallow connections. If you're in their inner circle, you've passed a vetting process most people don't realize exists, and you've earned a loyalty that's borderline unshakable. Fact 46. They're underestimated in negotiations. Big mistake. People see a quiet, thoughtful person across the negotiating table and think they've got an easy win. Then the prudent introvert calmly dismantles every assumption, presents research the other side didn't know existed, and structures a deal that somehow benefits everyone while protecting their interests. They're not aggressive, they're thorough. They've already run the numbers, identified leverage points, and prepared for every counteroffer. Their opponents realized too late that silence wasn't weakness, it was someone doing their homework while others practiced their poker face. Fact 48. They dominate one-on-one interactions. Put a prudent introvert in a group and they're wallflowers. Give them one person and undivided attention, they're suddenly the most engaging human you've ever met. Without the chaos of group dynamics, they can focus entirely on deep connection, ask questions that make you feel truly heard, and share insights they'd never broadcast to a crowd. This is where they shine, not because they're performing, but because they're genuinely present. People leave these conversations feeling like they just had therapy, strategy consulting, and a masterclass all at once. Fact 49. They've mastered the art of strategic incompetence. Prudent introverts have learned that sometimes looking slightly less capable means people leave them alone to work their magic. They won't volunteer to lead the office karaoke, organize the group outing, or be the face of the project, but they'll quietly do the critical work that makes everything succeed. It's not laziness, it's energy conservation. They've figured out that glory seekers can have the spotlight while they handled the substance, and somehow they end up with more influence, less drama, and way better work-life balance.
Fact 50. Their loyalty is earned, not given, and it's worth it. Prudent introverts don't do performative friendship or blind loyalty. You have to prove yourself over time. They're watching how you treat others when nothing's at stake, whether your actions match your words, and if you respect boundaries. It feels slow and maybe even cold, but once you've earned their trust, you've gained an ally who will go to war for you with zero hesitation. They remember who showed up when it mattered, and they'll repay that loyalty tenfold when you need them, no questions asked.
Fact 51. They can predict group decisions before they happen. In team settings, prudent introverts are like chess players seeing 5 moves ahead. They've observed who influences whom, tracked alliances and tensions, and calculated which way the decision will swing before discussion even starts. While others argue passionately, introverts are watching the real game. Who's nodding at whom? Whose opinion will tip the scales? When to speak to maximum effect? They rarely guess wrong because they're not listening to what people say. They're watching what people do, and behavior never lies.
Fact 52. Their revenge is a dish served calculated. Cross a prudent introvert, and you might think you got away with it. They didn't yell, didn't cause a scene, maybe even seemed fine. Mistake. They're not impulsive reactors, they're strategic responders. They'll remember, document patterns, and wait for the perfect moment when your own actions catch up with you. They don't need to destroy you. They'll just ensure they're not there to save you when you destroy yourself. It's not vindictive, it's just cause and effect with someone patient enough to let consequences unfold naturally. Fact 53. They're fluent in subtext. While others take conversations at face value, prudent introverts are fluent in what's not being said. They catch the hesitation before agreement, the forced enthusiasm, the redirect away from uncomfortable topics. They're reading between lines most people don't know exist, which makes them exceptional at navigating office politics, family dynamics, and any situation where the real message is buried under polite language. This skill makes them seem psychic, but they're just paying attention to the 90% of communication that happens below the surface. Fact 54. Their standards are insanely high, especially for themselves. Prudent introverts don't just overthink. They overprepare, overdeliver, and overanalyze their own performance with standards that would break most people. That project you think is done, they're still finding improvements. That conversation they had, they're replaying it, critiquing their word choices, planning how to do better next time. It's simultaneously their superpower and their curse. They produce exceptional work because good enough genuinely isn't in their vocabulary. But they also torture themselves over microscopic imperfections nobody else noticed. Fact 55. They know exactly who's authentic and who's performing. Prudent introverts can smell fake from a mile away because they've spent years observing rather than performing.
They notice when someone's energy shifts based on who enters the room, when enthusiasm is manufactured for effect, when kindness is transactional. They're not judging, they're just cataloging who's real and who's playing a character. This makes them excellent judges of character, but also means they struggle in environments where performance is rewarded over substance because they refuse to play that game. Fact 56. Their energy management is Olympic level. While others stumble through life wondering why they're exhausted, prudent introverts have turned energy conservation into an art form. They know exactly how much a client dinner will cost them, that saying yes to Saturday brunch means canceling Sunday plans, that a week of back-to-back meetings requires a recovery buffer. They're not antisocial, they're mathematically managing a finite resource. It looks like they're flaking or being difficult, but they're actually preventing the burnout that everyone else is barreling toward while calling them high maintenance. Fact number 57. They win arguments hours after they end. In real-time confrontation, prudent introverts might stumble, concede, or go quiet. Then, 3 hours later in the shower, they'll craft the perfect rebuttal that would have ended the argument in 10 seconds. Their brains need processing time to organize thoughts under pressure, not because they're slow, but because they're thorough. It's infuriating for them and confusing for opponents who think they won, not realizing the introvert is mentally drafting a dissertation on why they're wrong and filing it away for future reference. Fact 58. They're secret perfectionists who look effortless. That casual, laid-back vibe, it's covering up someone who's refined their work 17 times. Prudent introverts hide their perfectionism because they've learned that showing intense effort makes people uncomfortable or invites unwanted attention. So they polish in private and present like it was easy, which creates a weird dynamic where people either think they're naturally gifted or barely trying. The truth? They're working twice as hard as anyone else. They're just not performing the struggle for an audience. Fact 59. They can ghost you and feel zero guilt. If a prudent introvert decides you're energy draining, manipulative, or simply not worth their limited social resources, they will fade from your life with the stealth of a ninja and sleep perfectly fine. It's not cruelty, it's boundary enforcement. They've assessed the relationship, determined its net negative, and allocated their energy elsewhere. They won't give you closure, a dramatic exit, or an explanation, because that would require more energy investment in something they've already written off. To them, ghosting isn't rude, it's efficient. Their observations become prophecies. Tell a prudent introvert about your new relationship, job, or business venture, and if they go quiet, pay attention. They've spotted red flags you're too excited to see, but they know you won't listen yet. People rarely do. 6 months later, when things implode exactly how they predicted, they won't say, "I told you so," but they'll remember they saw it coming. Their pattern recognition doesn't just work retrospectively, it's genuinely predictive, which is both a gift and a burden, because watching people ignore obvious warning signs is exhausting. Fact 61. They're allergic to inefficiency. Prudent introverts experience actual physical discomfort watching preventable chaos unfold. Meetings that could have been emails, conversations that circle the same point, processes with obvious bottlenecks. It's like nails on a chalkboard. They're not control freaks. They just see the shortest path between points and can't understand why everyone's taking the scenic route. This makes them invaluable for optimization, but insufferable when they can't fix the inefficiency and have to watch the slow-motion disaster with a smile.
Fact 62. Their compliments are rare, so they hit different. When a prudent introvert compliments you, frame it, because they don't hand out praise like carnival tickets. They've observed, assessed, and determined something genuinely impressed them, which is a high bar. While extroverts throw around amazing and great job like confetti, introverts reserve validation for work that actually meets their exacting standards. Receiving praise from them feels different because you know it's been earned, not performed. Their silence isn't disapproval. Their rare acknowledgement is the real gold standard. Fact 63. They thrive in asynchronous communication. Email, project management tools, recorded videos. Give prudent introverts async communication and watch them dominate. They can think before responding, edit for clarity, and contribute without the pressure of real-time performance. While synchronous meetings favor quick thinkers and loud voices, async environments reward depth and precision, aka introverts' superpowers. Companies that embrace this unlock a productivity level from their introverted employees that real-time meetings could never achieve. But most organizations are still addicted to the performance theater of live interaction. Fact 64. They're collecting data on you, non-creepily. Every interaction with a prudent introvert is being logged, not in a creepy way, but in a pattern-building way. How you respond under stress, your consistency between words and actions, whether you remember things they told you, how you treat service workers. They're assembling a behavioral profile that determines how much they'll trust, invest in, or rely on you. It's not manipulation, it's due diligence. They're just treating relationships with the same analytical rigor most people reserve for buying cars. And honestly, more people should. Fact 65. Their calm is your warning system. When everyone's panicking and the prudent introvert is eerily calm, that's not Zen. That's them in operational mode. The overthinking has ended, the doing has begun. All those disaster scenarios they mentally rehearsed, now they're executing the contingency plans while your adrenaline is still figuring out whether to fight or flight. This paradox confuses people. The anxious person is suddenly the calmest in the crisis because anxiety was just preparation in disguise. Learn to recognize this shift. It means someone competent is handling things. Fact 66. They know exactly when you're lying, but won't tell you. Prudent introverts catch lies the way some people catch colds, constantly and with growing immunity. Your story has a logical inconsistency? They noticed. Your timeline doesn't add up? Cataloged. Your body language contradicts your words? Filed under interesting. They won't confront you, not worth the energy, but they've updated their internal assessment of your reliability. They're collecting these data points like receipts, and while they might never call you out, they'll definitely adjust how much truth, trust, or responsibility they give you going forward. Fact 67. Their ultimate power is not needing your validation. Here's what makes prudent introverts genuinely dangerous. They don't need your approval, applause, or acknowledgement to know their worth. While others chase external validation like it's oxygen, introverts have built internal measurement systems. They know when they've done good work, made the right call, or added value, whether anyone notices or not.
This independence from social approval makes them immune to manipulation tactics that work on everyone else and allows them to make unpopular but correct decisions without losing sleep. They're not trying to win popularity contests, they're trying to be right, and they're usually okay with those being mutually exclusive. So there you have it. 67 facts about prudent introverts that prove silence isn't weakness, it's strategy. While everyone else is performing, these quiet calculators are 3 steps ahead, collecting data, spotting patterns, and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. They're not antisocial, they're selectively social. They're not slow, they're thorough. And they're definitely not weak. They're just playing a completely different game than everyone else. And honestly, they're winning. If you're a prudent introvert watching this, you already knew most of this. You've been operating like this your whole life, while people called you shy, quiet, or overthinking. But now you know, you're not broken, you're just built different. And if you're an extrovert who just realized you've been underestimating the quiet person in your life, yeah, they noticed. They've been 5 steps ahead this entire time, and they're absolutely fine with you figuring that out just now. The world needs loud voices, sure, but it's the silent observers, the strategic thinkers, the prudent introverts who see what everyone else misses, and that's the real power move. Thanks for watching. If this resonated, hit that like button, subscribe for more deep dives into the psychology of being human, and drop a comment telling me which fact hit hardest. And remember, the quietest person in the room is often the most dangerous one, not because they're plotting against you, but because they've already figured you out. Peace.